to your schools. The focus of this webinar is to help you convene your advisory council. My name is Sue Reynolds. I'm the Executive Director of the American Student Achievement Institute, and also joining us from our staff is Chris Avona, who is our Administrative Assistant and Office Manager. So joining us today are Indiana schools who are using the RSC process to create a school counseling program linked to student achievement, and also a program that enables the school to receive the Ask a Ramp Award and the Indiana Gold Star School Counseling Award. Our format for today will be very informal. We'll take questions from the schools that are participating live and have some discussion as well. So here's today's agenda. We'll begin by reviewing terminology, beliefs, and just go through the process very quickly. We'll actually do this review at the beginning of every webinar just to make sure that everything is kind of falling into place. Then we'll talk about this month's activities, and specifically we're looking at convening your advisory council and recruiting those advisory council members. Your advisory council will be meeting with you 5 times through this school year, and we'll kind of go through that as well. We'll also talk about the submissions that you'll do this month, and make sure we cover the rubric for those submissions so that you know exactly what the reviewers for Gold Star or the reviewers for the Ramp Award will be looking at. We'll get online and look at the manual and the resources that are in the manual, and then also look at the online system. So we'll begin with the review and specifically the terminology. So just as a reminder, we have different terms that we use that refer to the activities, the RSC activities. When we use the term guidance, we're talking about activities that enable all students to master guidance standards, and as a result of mastering those standards, the students are making sound choices in areas that impact high achievement. So that's the guidance part. The guidance part of school counseling is more knowledge-based. We're helping students learn information, gain knowledge, and then use that knowledge in decision-making. In counseling, those activities help some students, not all students, because not all students are needy of counseling, but counseling activities help some students address personal or social problems that interfere with learning. In a typical school, about 20% of the kids have a personal or social issue that could benefit from counseling. Then there's also the kind of behind-the-scenes things that school counselors do to support the school counseling program. One is school counselors serve as advocates. So they do things that promote systemic change that will develop an environment that supports learning for all students. So they're an advocate for groups of students. And then they're also advocates for individual students. So when a counselor is at an annual case review, as an advocate for the student, that would be an advocacy activity. And then finally, the fourth and final part of the school counseling program is the management of the program. So these are activities that happen behind the scenes that enable all of the counseling and guidance activities to run effectively and smoothly. So here are some common management activities. These are sound school counseling activities that we have to do in order to make sure that our programs are efficient. So program development, that's what we're doing today as part of RSC. Professional development or personal development, that's what we're doing in this webinar right now. Networking with other people in your school, with other people in the community, and then evaluating your school counseling program. These are all management activities that are good activities because they make your school counseling program healthier. Then we also, school counselors, get involved in doing things that we call non-program activities. So we're defining a non-program activity as an activity that does not help students master those guidance standards and does not help students address a personal or social problem that's interfering with learning. In other words, if it's not guidance and it's not counseling, it's not advocacy, it's not management, it's probably going to be non-program. Many school counselors spend a significant portion of their day doing things that have nothing to do with guidance and counseling. And that's as we go through redesigning our school counseling programs, we want to take a look at that. Here are some things that are typical non-program activities that are assigned to school counselors. And you can see they're good activities. I mean, somebody's got to put out the report card. Somebody's got to handle book rental. Somebody's got to facilitate graduation. But these activities do not help students overcome a personal or social issue, and they do not help students master one of the guidance standards. So they're non-program activities. They are not part of the school counseling program. So let's look at, finally, our RSC beliefs and the whole process that you'll be participating in this year is based on this fundamental belief. And that is that school counseling programs help students make sound choices in areas that impact academic success. And to help kind of demonstrate that, we've come up with what we call the school counseling pyramid. And basically, what this pyramid is demonstrating is that when students participate in a sound guidance and counseling program, they make better choices in areas that impact achievement, and as a result of that, achievement goes up. Then, this year, as we're designing your school counseling program, we're just going to work this pyramid backwards. We're going to start with student achievement. So we'll look at what are the achievement goals that your school has? What are the goals in your school improvement plan? And then we'll say, okay, in order for the school to reach those goals, what choices do the kids have to make? It may be in a high school that the kids have to choose to enroll in an AP class, or the kids have to choose to participate in class or turn their homework in, or to not be aggressive, or to address bullying issues. So there's choices that kids make that we know that when kids make those choices, they're more likely to be successful in school. Then once we have those choices defined, then we'll come back and say, okay, what guidance activities and what counseling activities do we need to put in place to help kids make those choices? So this is what we call the school counseling pyramid, and it really shows the connection between school counseling and achievement. Okay, let's pause quickly here. Any questions about terminology, the pyramid, anything in there? No questions here, so no questions. Okay, we'll go on. Then let's look at the process. So this is what we'll be doing this year. Already you've taken steps to get ready. So you put together your steering team, you collected data last spring through the survey, and again, if you haven't, call me and we're going to open that survey up for 5 days in the second week in September. You've done your self-studies over the summer, and now the last step of getting ready is recruiting your advisory council members. So then next month, in the first Tuesday of September, we'll get together and as a webinar, and we'll prep for the first meeting of your advisory council. So we'll go through how to introduce RSC to your advisory council. We'll do that the first Tuesday in September. Then in September, you'll have that advisory council meeting, and we'll give you all the materials and go through them, and you'll conduct that meeting. Then in October, we'll come back and do the prep for the October advisory council meeting, which is on visioning. This is a really important meeting because it gets everybody going in the same direction. It builds a lot of energy, and you do that in October. Then in November, we'll give your advisory council part of the survey data that has to do with student choices, and we'll ask your advisory council to come up with a list of all of the choices that kids need to make in your school in order to be successful, in order to leave your school prepared for the next academic level. So then that's a long list. There may be 70 or 80 things on that list, all these choices that kids have to make as a 3rd grader or a 5th grader or 9th grader. And then we'll come back at the December meeting, and we'll say to your advisory council, here's this long list, but we really want to focus on a couple of these things and really put a lot of energy into them. So we'll talk with your advisory council about how much time and energy you have. At that point, we'll bring back the time task data that you've been collecting through your time task logs. And we'll say to the advisory council, is there any way that we can expand our time or expand our funding or expand our energy? We'll do that in step 4A. And they'll brainstorm that. We'll come up with a plan for expanding your resources. And then we'll say, okay, given that we're going to have this much time, this much money, this much energy, how many of these goals can we tackle as priority goals? Some school counseling programs will just have one goal. Others will have 2 or 3 goals. But it's a small number because it's something that we're going to impact school-wide. We're going to reach every student in the building and making sure that whatever that choice is, that everybody's making it. Once we know what our priority goals are, then in February we'll come back with another set of data from the survey. And this set is going to help us understand why kids aren't making those choices. So if one of our priority goals is that we want all kids to complete the FAFSA, then we want to look at why aren't kids completing the FAFSA. Is it that they don't have the information about the FAFSA, so it's a guidance issue? Is it that there's so much personal or social stuff going on in their lives that they're just kind of disengaged in school? Or maybe they're engaged and they have the information, but we've never given them the opportunities. So in this root cause part, we're going to look at what's interfering with our priority goals. We'll look at that data to help us make that decision. Then in March, the last activity of your advisory council is to help you plan the activities that you'll do in the coming year, so in 14-15, that will address the root causes. And then after March, for the April and May, you'll just spend time preparing for the next year. You'll develop a program calendar with all those activities in it, a budget, lesson plans, and you'll be getting ready for the next year. So that's the process, and let's go ahead and pause here. Any questions about the process? If not, we're going to launch into new materials.
Looks like Kelly Johnson has her hand up.
Okay. Kelly?
Yes, I think at this point I probably need to be inactive because I had discussed with my administrator, and she is very much on board for me pursuing this next year. And I would not want this to be a 2-year process for me, and I have not done any of the pre-meeting preparations. Is that something that is feasible at this time? I'd like to still be a part of the webinars.
Absolutely.
To gain that information.
Yeah, the nice thing about RSC is it's all voluntary. You do it the way you want to do it. So that makes more sense to you. That would be fine. We'll be launching next year in February. There will be a February webinar to get people started on those first tasks.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Other questions?
No other questions.
Okay.
Oh, wait, Monica Heyman has.
Okay, Monica.
Hold on a minute. Okay.
Okay, I was concerned because I didn't do the surveys and everything from you guys, but I did do a survey at the end of the year for all my students and all the teachers. Like I did a survey monkey for a whole lot of different things to assess, what I was doing and things like that. But I'm not sure if I need to use that or just use what you guys have in September and just start up.
Yeah, why don't you give me a call and we can kind of talk about the content of your survey. If it's, depending on the content, we have had schools use other surveys, and that's fine with us. But if we need to make sure that it's going to fall into student choices and guidance indicators and that kind of stuff. So just give me a call after this, and we'll kind of look at the content of your survey and see how good of a fit there is.
Okay.
And then if not, you can always give the RSC survey in September.
That sounds great.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
Oh, I see a question from Beth. Just one second while I try to pull that up. She says, if we have school-specific questions, oh, I'm sorry, I can answer that offline. Go ahead.
Okay, okay.
I apologize.
That's okay. Okay, very good. Let's go on then. Okay, so here we go into new content. So this month's task is to recruit your advisory council. And this is a really important task. Schools that do this well, oh my gosh, it's so rich later. So let's talk about how to do that. One thing we want to think about is why even bother to convene an advisory council. I think that's one of the things that makes RSC so cumbersome, is because it's not just us making decisions, but we have all these other people helping us. And really the reason is I was a school counselor for a whole bunch of years. And before I had an advisory council, every decision that I made was based on the perspective of a middle-class white female. And the students in my building were not all like me. And I was not looking at things from their perspective. Once we put our advisory council together, then we had all these different ideas coming to the table, and it really enabled us to design a school counseling program that would meet the needs of our kids based on where they were coming from. It was really wonderful. So one of the things we want you to think about as you're putting together your advisory council is your advisory council mirroring the community? Does it mirror the race makeup that's in your community, the ethnic makeup in your community, the different economic levels that you have, gender, and gender is a lot of times in school counseling we tend to be all female, or 99% female. So we want to make sure that on your advisory councils we have a good even split of genders. And then the other thing is looking at the geographic location. And in a rural school, you might look at, if you are a consolidated school, where were the communities that consolidated into yours? Or do you have communities that are through your district? And just make sure that you have some people from every different community. In an urban school, you might look at, if you're at a high school, that you've got 3 middle schools that are all feeding into you, to just make sure that you've got folks from each of the different middle school geographic regions. So things to pay attention to. This is really going to be very, very helpful and make your discussions rich if you can get a lot of diversity into your advisory council, and just making sure that every group in your community is represented proportionally in your advisory council. So the other thing we want you to think about is really being strategic in who you're inviting to be on your council. One thing to think about is who's going to have the ability later to allocate resources. Probably the biggest resource for a school counselor is time. So be thinking about, who has control over time. In most schools, it's the principal. So you might want to get your principal or a key administrator who goes to meetings with your principal into your advisory council. Also be thinking about who has the ability to allocate funding. A lot of schools in the past, and in all of our initiatives now, we're really asking people to connect with their community foundations. Community foundations love projects where somebody else is organizing the project because they don't have the capacity to do that, but they do have the capacity to fund projects. So that would be a good player to bring to the table, so that if you needed funding later, you might have a source there. You also want to be thinking about who has access to kids. Down the road, it might be that if you've got somebody from your Boy Scout Council, that the light bulb goes off that they can do activities through their Boy Scout troops that are going to build upon some of the work that you're doing as guidance in the schools. Or even in my case, some of my community organizations who worked with kids, just said, we've been doing this in the community with, just the kids who show up at the Girl Scout meetings. Why don't we just do this in your school and we can hit all kids? So they took on some of the program delivery for me, which was wonderful. Also, we want to make sure that you have people on your advisory council who have access to parents. So maybe somebody representing your PTA or your band boosters or your athletic boosters, or your faith-based organizations, because we know that kids turn first to their parents for guidance, which is how I think it should be. But if we can have people sharing good information about academic decisions and career decisions with parents, and enables parents to provide better information for their children. So that's something to think about. Knowledge-based, having knowledge of global economics is really, really helpful. I'll talk more about that in a minute. And then kind of be thinking about who else could be providing guidance lessons besides you. For example, we involved our family and consumer science teachers a lot because it's part of their national curriculum and standards to do career development. So we brought them to the table, and then a lot of the health standards, we tried to integrate our health people into our advisory council because in their curriculum there's a lot of social personal prevention kind of indicators and standards. So be thinking about, who in the school might be in a position to help deliver part of the guidance curriculum, and then who in the community might be in the same boat that could help deliver part of the curriculum. So one thing to remember about your advisory council, when we talked before, we talked about how your steering team were worker bees, and that every time we met there would be a homework assignment to be done as we're working through the process and preparing the portfolio for RAMP or Gold Star. But your advisory council are not worker bees. They're thinker bees. They're going to come to these meetings, do a whole lot of thinking. You're going to involve them in discussions, looking at data. They'll think. They'll give you lots of ideas, and then they go home with no homework. And then they come back a month later, and we're going to think some more, and then they go back. So you are the worker bees. The steering team is the worker bees. The advisory council are the thinker bees. That also means that someone like a mayor who maybe wouldn't want to be a worker bee for this school counseling initiative, but he might have the capacity and the time to be a thinker bee for you. So just kind of think about that differently. Steering team are the worker bees, advisory council are the thinker bees. Okay, so here's a typical advisory council makeup. Usually our advisory councils have 20 to 30 people on them. Not to worry about a group that big. We'll give you all the resources that you need to facilitate discussions and to come to consensus with a group that big. So in a school, the makeup might include teachers. You want to make sure that you have all the grade levels represented, all subject areas represented. Students are on the advisory council from all grade levels, even the little kids. We hear from our elementary schools that a second grader and a third grader, sometimes the counselors will kind of prep them ahead of what's going to be discussed at the meeting. But they do great. And then, of course, upper elementary kids are great on the advisory council. All programs, we want to make sure that you have high ability students, general ed students, special education students, kids who are involved in college prep curriculum, career and tech ed curriculum, just all different kinds of kids. Counselors, administrators, representatives of your feeder schools, representative of your receiving schools. And then in the community, parents, economic development reps, some of these groups we're going to talk about later. The media is great. If they're involved in this with you, schools tell us all the time what positive media they've gotten as a result of having a media person, someone from the newspaper or a TV station, on their advisory council. Service clubs, just all these different community organizations that can be involved. So it might be that you know somebody that's a member of the Kiwanis Club and you're just going to call them up and invite them. Or you could also just call the president of the Kiwanis Club, tell them what you're doing, and ask if they would send a representative to your advisory council meetings. So different ways to do that. In terms of economic development, this is probably one of the keys, one of the most important members of your advisory council. Folks who are involved in economic development can really help you think about the level of academic rigor that kids need. And so they really add some richness to the discussions, because it's not, without this, it's just like, let's raise achievement because the federal government says we have to. But with economic development there, we're raising achievement because they help us understand, that we're looking at standard of living. We're looking at job security for kids. And if we love kids and we understand global economics, then we have to raise rigor. And so it really adds some richness, especially to the discussion about our dreams for kids. And every county has an economic development council in it. Some have more than one. Some individual cities also have economic development groups in the city. Then in terms of your business reps, we've learned that if you can get a business rep who is a higher level person, like a vice president, who's in charge of human resources, they bring a real richness to the table because they're wondering, what are my employees going to be like 10 years from now? And so if they're working with an elementary school, in the back of their mind, they're developing their human resource. And just like they want to look at, material resources and making sure that that meets their needs, businesses are really interested in looking at the human resources. Our experience has been that they will jump on the opportunity to be involved with you to help design the human resources that are going to come to them 5 or 10 years from now as a resource. Community foundations, again, we're starting to heavily involve the community foundations in all of our initiatives, and they bring such a richness to the table, and I think will be extremely helpful to your discussions, as well as later a source for funding for you if there's an initiative that you want to do that you need funding for. Service clubs, all of the service clubs whose logos you see on the screen have something about developing youth as part of their mission. So really, the service clubs are often looking for projects. They not only, I think, would welcome the opportunity to be on your advisory council, but could also implement guidance activities on your behalf down the road. So something to think about with them. One of the questions we get is, if you are from a district with multiple schools that are all doing RSC, do you each need an advisory council? The answer to that question is yes. And that's because the students will be a little different in every school, the data will be a little different in every school, and also the politics are different in every school. So we really want each school to have their own advisory council. There will be parts when there's a presentation where the two advisory councils might meet together for the presentation and then break into separate councils for the discussion. So something to think about, but each school should have its own advisory council. And then in terms of what they do, they'll be attending, and that's a typo, they'll be attending 5 monthly advisory council meetings. We combined 2 this year. But they'll be attending these 5 meetings, and during the meetings you'll be giving them data, and then they'll just give you input. So all of these meetings are not you talking at the advisory council, it's you tossing out a discussion question and they're talking to you. So we're in listening mode, they're in talking mode. They'll provide input, and then after the first year, as you start to implement some of those activities, they'll provide you feedback on how they think the activities went. The other really cool thing about the advisory council is that as they get to know you and as they start to look at student data and understand students' needs and understand everything that you're able to do, they tend to become very strong advocates for your school counseling program. So if you, they'll speak on your behalf to your board, to your administrator, to the media. I know me personally, some of you may have heard this story before, but in my school, our board was going to RIF one of our counselors, and our advisory group went to the school board and said, you're not RIFing a person, you're RIFing a program, and this is not okay that our kids don't have this programming. And our school board decided that it, to keep the position. And just earlier today, we heard from a school that their advisory council, when they looked at all the data, they convinced the administration to hire a new counselor and a counseling secretary. So they can really be strong advocates for you. And then the other thing, and this won't happen in the beginning, but down the road, we're hoping that the light bulb will go off and they'll say, oh, we could help with that program. And then you've got extra arms and legs to help you implement the programs that you design. So that's pretty cool. Okay, let's stop here to see if there's any questions about advisory council. I see no questions, Sue. Okay. We'll move right along then. Submissions, The first one is the Advisory Council. So when the reviewers who are reading your portfolio are looking, are reviewing your portfolio, these are the things that they'll be looking for. So are there representatives of students, teachers, parents, business, and community organizations? And does the roster include this contact information? The very last one there, perspectives, we're not going to worry about this month. At your first meeting, we'll ask each member of your council to think about what perspective do they bring to the table. They'll name their own perspective. So some people might say, you know, I could represent the views of low-income folks, or I could represent the views of third-grade parents, or whatever. We'll let them name that at the first meeting, so don't worry about that right now. And then also just a reminder that you're doing your time task logs, and those you'll be doing all year. We'll look at that data in second semester. But we need a time task log from every counselor from first semester and then every counselor from second semester, and you'll upload those into the system. Okay, the manual, and very quickly we'll show this to you online as well, but the manual looks like this for this month's activities, and these are the 4 resources that you have. I would definitely suggest that you pull out document D1. This will help you brainstorm about who to put on your advisory council. The first step in this brainstorm is just to circle the numbers of the types of people that you have in your school's geographic area. And then second step is to put names. Who do I know, or who could we reach out to help us find somebody from that stakeholder group to be on the council. Then we've also, document D2 is talking points, what to say the first time you call someone up. Document D3 is a letter to send people after they agree to be on the council. And again, you can edit all this stuff, or you don't have to use it at all, or edit it to make it fit your needs. Okay, so let's look at the online system. Moving right along. And I'm logged in as Corydon. So basically, in the online system this month, and really every month, you really only need these 3 blue tabs. The rest of these tabs are kind of shortcuts that take you different places. So the Uses tab, on that one, I just want to make sure that everybody, as soon as you can, check to make sure that this first-year process is checked there. That customizes your website, and we want to make sure that you've all got the website for a first-year school. Then please answer these program selection questions. Does your school currently have RAMP? No. Are you seeking RAMP? Yes. And when are you going to turn in your portfolio? 2014 for you guys. So just answer those questions. That's all. And you only have to do that one time, and that's it. But please make sure you do that, or you might not have the right stuff in your online system. The manual, there's 2 things I want to show you in there. So I clicked on the manual tab on the left, and in that tab, if I scroll down, here is Advisory Council Recruitment. So those are the 4 things that we just looked at. And if I scroll down to the very bottom, here is the IU credit information, the IU credit log, and then in Indiana, this should say PGP, the PGP log. So that's where to start logging your time, time that you spend at home, in evenings, weekends, working on RSC. And then the main tab over here is the Process tab. And again, very quickly, I'm going to scroll down. We've done the first 3 steps. We're now on step 4. We are participating in the webcast, so you can go ahead and check that one off right now. And then after you have your advisory council together, you're going to enter the advisory council roster. Just hit that enter button, and this is taking you to a second screen that tells you that you can get out an email list for your advisory council members with commas or semicolons between them. Or you can click the enter icon to add a new person, and then just fill in the information about the people, except for the perspective. You're not going to do that until next month, and then just save. You can also remove a person once they're in there if somebody stops participating. So, so that's that. Let me go back a couple. There we go. And then always at the end of each month, check the rubric items. Make sure that you've met all of the things that that you need to do for Gold Star and for RAMP and for us. These are all just quality standards to make sure that you're doing good work. So I think I'll uncheck this because I don't want to save anything that I put in, and I think that's it. So that's really quick on the online system. If you forget how to log in to the online system, you just go to our website, www.asainstitute.org/RSC, and here's where you log in. And if you forget your username and password, there's information here about how to reset your username and password. Okay, I think that's very quick. We're a few minutes over. I apologize for that. I'd like to stop right on time. That will be my goal for next month. So, Chris, any questions before we
yes,
close?
I see one question from Rose. Let me open this up here. Rose is asking, are the time logs needed for every week or just 1 week for each semester?
Every week. And I remember those are such a pain to do, but the data is going to be so powerful. When your advisory council looks at that data, and when you look at that data, you'll really come to some understanding about where you're spending your time, and then there's also a discussion about where's the ideal places where you need to be spending your time, and then we'll make adjustments from the actual to the ideal. If you only do 1 week, you don't really get a snapshot. Like I know for me, when I was a high school counselor, if that 1 week had been during schedule changes at the beginning of the year, that would not have reflected my whole year at all. So we really want it to be all year long.
Okay, and Kelly Johnson has her hand up with a question.
Okay.
Yes, I definitely want to start the process for next year and do this as a one-year thing, and you had mentioned a webinar in February. Will that information be provided on the Indiana Counselor Talk listserv, or how can I make sure that I don't forget about that?
Right. Actually, you can do it 3 ways. One, you can check our website, and as soon as we haven't posted that webinar yet because we wanted to get you guys all in and so that you didn't register for the wrong webinar, but probably in the next few weeks we'll have the registration up. And then also we announce on Counselor Talk and the Department of Education's newsletter that Amanda Cullen puts out, she'll announce it in there too. So if you monitor those things, it'll be great. I can give you the date of it right now, so that will help.
That'd be great.
It is February, let's see, intro 2014 cohort is February 11th.
Okay.
Yep. And
for the time being, I'll go back and I'll make sure I put in that.
That sounds good. I told you wrong. It's not a webinar. It's a face-to-face. We do the first one face-to-face. It'll be in Indianapolis from 9:30 to 12:30.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
I see no more questions.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, everybody, for participating in our first webinar for this year. Remember, the webinars are every Tuesday at this time. Not every Tuesday, the first Tuesday of every month at this time. And just wanted to leave you with this thought. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And we're hoping that you are the small group of people that are starting to really look at redesigning school counseling across the state of Indiana. Started out with just a few, and we're up to 180 schools and growing. So very good. Thank you, everybody. And if you need to follow up with us, feel free to give us a call. Thank you.